Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Inderveer Singh from Central University of Himachal Pradesh. Today we are going to talk on module Simple Keynesian Model from paper Managerial Economics. This module has two objectives: to understand the Keynesian argument about importance of aggregate demand and to learn the meaning of effective demand and its importance from policy perspective. The whole lecture has four parts. We will first discuss its background, then we will move to simple Keynesian model and criticism of Keynesian model. In end, we will summarize the lecture. John Maynard Keynes published his book, The General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money in 1936. The book became one of the most influential works in history of economics and led to the rise of Keynesian economics. The general theory was an attempt to explain Great Depression of 1920s and 30s. The classical economists believed that full employment is the natural state of an economy and any departure from it is temporary as the market forces lead the economy back to the full employment equilibrium. In contrast, Keynes argued that an unregulated competitive economy does not automatically lead to full employment. Instead, the economy may have a stable equilibrium with underemployment or underproduction as its natural state. He argued that without an active intervention of government, this equilibrium may stay for a long time. Before discussing to Keynes' argument, let us briefly discuss the argument of classical economists. The argument of classical economists can be best described with Say's law. Say's law rejects the possibility of general overproduction. Overproduction may happen in some markets due to misallocation of resources, that is, low demand of a product means excess demand of another good. If there is a overproduction of one commodity, then the market forces will lead to the shift in production so that in the long run supply is equal to demand. Here it should be mentioned that production at optimum point also means full employment, as resources will be fully employed and all that is produced is sold. In case of unemployment, the wage rate will decline until all those who wishes to work get employment. Say's law is based on the argument that people produce commodities because they want other commodities in exchange. Here we are ignoring the self-consumption of commodities as it does not cause overproduction. Therefore, each person while producing a commodity also creates a demand of equal worth. In a barter economy, the validity of an argument is clear, as the people will produce goods only if they are interested in exchanging them for other commodities. In other words, the nature of exchange ensures that the demand of commodity is equal to supply of commodity. If a product is not sold, that is, there is overproduction of a commodity, then the nature of exchange requires that there is underproduction of some other commodity. In this situation, some of the people who are engaged in overproduced commodity will shift to the production of underproduced commodity. To make the argument clearer, let us suppose that there are just three commodities X, Y and Z produced in an economy. In a barter economy, people produce with a purpose to exchange their produce with other commodities. For example, a person in our three commodity case produces commodity X only if she wishes to have commodity Y or Z or certain quantity of both. Similarly, the producer of Y and Z commodities will like to get at least one of the other two commodities in exchange. Now, suppose a producer of X fails to exchange some of her produce for her desired commodity, say Y. Then there will be overproduction of X in the economy. In a barter economy, X will only be produced in excess if at least one of the other commodity, that is Y or Z or both is underproduced. Remember that in a barter economy, the producer of a commodity has no other use of her produce than exchanging it with other commodity. As in our case, the producer of Y have only just two commodities X and Y to exchange their produce with. If the producer of Y does not exchange Y for X, then situation means either underproduction of Y or higher demand for Z in terms of quantity of Y required to get unit of Z. If Z is underproduced, more Y will be required to get a unit of Z. This situation is similar to having high profit in production of Y or Z or both if money is used for exchange. In this situation, the producer of X will start shifting to the production of Z or Y or both until overproduction ceases to exist. This three commodity case can be extended to n commodity case without any change in the basic argument. In this situation, the producer of X will start shifting to the production of Z or Y or both until overproduction ceases to exist. This three commodity case can be extended to n commodity case without any change in the basic argument. The crux of the argument is that overproduction of some commodities means underproduction of some other commodities. Therefore, it's possible to have overproduction in some of the markets but not all markets. Also, overproduction is the short-run phenomena, as a shift in production will remove this overproduction. In other words, in long run, all that is supplied will be consumed and the resources will be fully employed. Before proceeding further, let us discuss the meaning and implication of general overproduction. General overproduction is a situation when overproduction exists in a number of markets without other commodities being underproduced. This has a direct implication on economic activity as well as on employment. If overproduction is associated with underproduction in other markets, the resources will shift from one type of production to other. However, the non-existence of excess demand for other commodities means the resources which gets unemployment due to lower demand in one market will not be absorbed somewhere else. This situation means the existence of unemployment in the long run. For example, the overproduction of X in the previous three commodity case will be a general overproduction if there is no underproduction of Z or Y. So the labor force which will get unemployed due to reduction of production of Y, as there is no point producing the quantity that remains unsold or unexchanged, will not be absorbed somewhere else. Classical economists applied the same argument to an economy which uses money for exchange. Bringing the money into the picture creates a problem, as the money cannot be saved. In barter economy, a commodity is not produced to be exchanged at some future date. So supply and demand is produced at the same time. However, when commodities are exchanged for money, the producer may not spend the money received after selling the commodity. As a result, the value of commodities produced may not be equal to the total expenditure of the people. However, the total expenditure may still be equal to the value of commodities produced if total saving of the people is equal to the total investment. The classical economist believed that a rational person will invest his saving, therefore total income will be equal to total expenditure. If all savings are invested, overproduction of some commodities means underproduction of some other goods. That is, people are spending more on some commodities relative to others. In this situation, underproduced commodities will be earning higher profits as their prices will increase due to high demand, and overproduced commodities due to fall in their prices will be bearing loss. As a result, there will be shift from production of the overproduced commodities to the underproduced commodities. Again, the classical argument denies the possibility of general overproduction. Keynes, however, pointed out that general overproduction may happen due to lower aggregate demand in the economy. Though many economists like Thomas Robert Malthus have already made the argument that underproduction may lead to general overproduction, they failed to provide a complete explanation for it. Now let's discuss simple Keynesian model. Keynes provided a theory of employment and output by arguing that depression are the result of inadequate aggregate demand in the economy. He argued that production decisions of the firm are based on spending decisions of the people. Increasing expenditure of the people leads to increase in production, whereas decrease in spending result into decline in production. Thus, it is the aggregate demand that decides the level of output in the economy. Keynes, by pointing out the possibility of lower spending, rejected the classical argument which denies the possibility of general overproduction. As per Keynes, the aggregate spending may not always match the income generated in an economy at full employment level. In Keynesian theory, equilibrium exists in the economy where spending decision of the people match production decision of the firm. That is, aggregate demand is equal to aggregate supply. Keynes termed this point effective demand. To understand Keynesian argument, we shall differentiate between actual expenditure and planned expenditure. Actual expenditure is the amount spent by consumers, firms, and government to purchase commodities. Actual expenditure in the economy is equal to total income of the country, as one person's spending is other person's income. In a closed economy, it is equivalent to gross domestic product. Planned expenditure, on the other hand, is the amount that consumers, firms, and government plans to spend on commodities. Planned expenditure may differ from actual expenditure, as a firm may sell more or less than its planned sale, leading to increase or decrease in firm's inventories. Thus, the planned expenditure may be less or more than the actual expenditure. In a closed economy, the planned expenditure P consists of consumption C, planned investment I, and government expenditure G. Therefore, it can be written as P is equal to C plus I plus G. Let C is a function of y minus t be a consumption function where y is the income of people and t is tax paid to the government. The function shows that consumption depends on disposable income y minus t of the people. After replacing C in 1 with consumption function, we will get P is equal to consumption function plus I plus G. Let us assume that investment, government expenditure, and tax are exhaustively determined and fixed. To distinguish fixed investment, tax, and government expenditure, we will write them as I bar, G bar, and T bar. Now, the equation 2 can be written as P is equal to consumption function, where tax is exhaustively determined plus exhaustively determined investment plus exhaustively determined government expenditure. Equation 3 shows that planned expenditure is a function of income, tax, government expenditure, and planned investment. For convenience, we will assume a linear relationship between y and p. However, one may drop this assumption without any change in the basic argument or relation. A linear relationship means a constant slope of the line. The slope of line is the ratio of change in consumption and change in income, which represent change in consumption expenditure with a unit change in income. This ratio is called marginal propensity to consume. For example, if MPC is 0.8, for 100 rupee increase in income, the consumption increases by 80 rupees. For a differentiable function, MPC can be written as derivative of C with respect to y, that is dC over dy. For example, if C is equal to A plus B y minus t, then MPC derivative of C with respect to y will be equal to B. Since tax, investment and government expenditure are assumed as fixed, MPC is equal to slope of planned expenditure line. Since people often do not consume their entire increased income, therefore marginal propensity to consume is less than 1. Figure 1 shows the relationship between planned expenditure and income. The slope of line in figure 1 shows that with each rupee 1 increase in income, the increase in planned expenditure will be less than 1. That is, marginal propensity to consume is less than 1. The economy is in equilibrium when the planned expenditure P is equal to income Y, that is, actual expenditure and planned expenditure are equal. However, as discussed earlier, the planned expenditure may be higher or lower than income. The figure 2 shows these three possibilities. The economy is in equilibrium at point E as planned expenditure is equal to income. Since the plans of people relies in equilibrium, that is, aggregate demand is equal to aggregate supply, the firms need not change their production. Now assume the second possibility that planned expenditure is higher than income. At this point, the firms are selling more than their production, therefore their inventories will decline. In response, the firms will increase the production and hire more workers. In other words, if planned expenditure is higher than income in any period, income and employment will increase in the next period. An increase in income will also lead to increase in planned expenditure. Nonetheless, increase in planned expenditure will be less compared to income increase as marginal propensity to consume is less than 1. Due to increase in income and planned expenditure, the economy will move towards equilibrium E. Now, suppose that economy is at income Y2 and the planned expenditure P2 is lower than the income. Here the firms will be selling less than their plan and the firm will accumulate inventories. The firm will respond to the situation by lowering their production and the total income will decline. Lowering of production will be accompanied with lower employment as extra workforce will be laid off. The planned expenditure will also decline with the income decline. However, this decline will be less than decline in actual income as marginal propensity to consume is less than 1. Again, the economy will move towards equilibrium point E. Thus, the economy has a tendency to come back to equilibrium, where planned expenditure is equal to income. The employment in the economy will be corresponding to the income Y. However, E need not be a full employment equilibrium. The equilibrium E is a point where aggregate demand in the economy is equal to aggregate supply. It is possible that full employment income level is towards the right side of Y. Let us suppose Y2 is the full employment income level. It is not sustainable income level due to lower aggregate demand or lower planned expenditure, and the economy will return to income Y. There will be general overproduction at full employment income, that is Y2. The situation can be imagined as an equilibrium point where no overproduction exists. However, a share of workforce is not included or partially included in production and exchange process. Keynes argued that government can use fiscal policy to stimulate the economy and put it at a higher income level. The argument can be explained using figure 3. Let us suppose the economy is at equilibrium E1. Now let us suppose that income Y2 is full employment equilibrium. It means that economy is producing at below full employment level of income. As previously discussed, any change in income will not sustain unless equilibrium is shifted to E2, which is corresponding to full employment income. Now, suppose that government increases its expenditure by fixed amount delta G. This increase will shift the planned expenditure upward, as this additional expenditure will add to the planned expenditure at each income level. Due to this shift, the new equilibrium will be at E2 and Y2 will be the new equilibrium level of income. Also, the economy will be at full employment level in the new equilibrium. Thus, the fiscal policy may increase the income to full employment level. In addition to advocating increase in government expenditure, Keynes also criticized classical argument that wage decline will lead to full employment. In Keynesian model, the planned expenditure is an important determinant of income level. Keynes argued that any decline in wage rate also lowers the purchasing power of the people, which shifts the planned expenditure line downwards towards worse income equilibrium. Therefore, the decline in wage rate cannot solve the problem of general overproduction. Next, we will discuss is multiplier effect. This increase in income in Keynesian model is higher than the increase in government expenditure. It is called multiplier effect. The additional government expenditure increase the income of the people. This increased income also increase the consumption of the people. Since consumption of one person is the income of another, the consumption out of income received from additional government expenditure further increase the income. Since income receiver at each stage will consume a portion of their income, this process will go on. Thus, the actual income will be higher than the additional government expenditure. The total increase in income due to government interference depends on marginal propensity to consume. For example, if the government increases the expenditure by rupees 100, then the immediate increase in income will be rupees 100. Now suppose that people spend 80% of their additional income, that is MPC is 0.8. The next increase in income due to the first receiver's consumption will be rupees 80. Multiply income with 0.8 to get the next increase in income. Assuming that receiver of rupees 80 also has MPC is equal to 0.8. The next income increase will be rupees 64. The income increase in the subsequent rounds can be calculated in the similar way. The total income increase in this example can be written as total income increase equal to 100 plus 100 into 0.8 plus 100 into 0.8 square plus 100 into 0.8 cube and so on, and it will provide us a total income increase of rupees 500. In general, the formula for total increase in income delta y due to increase in government expenditure delta g can be written as delta y equal to delta g plus delta g into MPC plus delta g into MPC square plus delta g into MPC cube and so on, and which is will be equal to delta g into 1 over 1 minus MPC. The multiplier effect is a change in income due to change in government spending. Therefore, multiplier change in y due to change in g is 1 over 1 minus MPC. In other words, the multiplier effect depends on marginal propensity to consume. A large MPC means higher increase in income and lower MPC means lower increase in income. It should also be mentioned that multiplier effect is discussed as static concept here. We have calculated income increase as if government spending will immediately increase the income. In reality, the income increase is not immediate and it happens in multiple periods. In each period, the income responds to change in planned expenditure and economy moves to the new equilibrium income level. This multiple period effect on income is called dynamic multiplier. Now let's discuss criticism of Keynesian argument. Keynesian theory is criticized for failing to provide good prediction of economic activities. Keynesian theory emphasized the problem of low aggregate demand. However, most of the unemployment after 1950s was due to supply side constraints. The problem happens because Keynes considered aggregate supply curve to be elastic even in the long run. There are also problems related to using Keynesian policy suggestion during recession. To understand this, let's consider the possible ways of funding additional government expenditure. The additional government expenditure can be funded by raising taxes or budget deficit. High tax rate discourages economic activity and lowers the consumption of the people. Thus, any positive effect of additional expenditure is negated by negative effect of taxes. In fact, Keynesian economists suggest cutting taxes during recession. Therefore, deficit financing is the best way to finance the additional expenditure. Budget deficit may be financed by borrowing from the market or printing money. If supply constraint is the problem, borrowing money from market leads to increase in rate of interest, especially in a full employment situation, which lowers the private investment in the economy called crowding out effect. The positive effect of additional expenditure may be much lower or even negative as the government expenditure is often less productive than private investment. Further, the financing of deficit by printing money may lead to inflation, especially if the economy is already recovering. In addition, it is difficult to know the exact amount of increase in government expenditure required to bring the economy out of recession. A large stimulus may lead to much higher negative effect of inflation and crowding out. Therefore, increasing government expenditure is not free from problems. So students, let us summarize what we have learned in this module. Keynesian theory originates from the failure of classical economists to explain the 1920-30s depression, and it changed the way economists think about macroeconomic issues. And that in an economy, the income depends on aggregate demand. The aggregate demand, by influencing the expectation of the producers, determines the level of production in the economy. The economy is at equilibrium where the expectation of people are met. However, this equilibrium point need not be a full employment equilibrium. Therefore, the government interference through increase in expenditure may bring about full employment equilibrium in the economy. Despite many criticism, the theory along with the debate surrounding it provided important insights into the microeconomic aspects and the role of government expenditure. Thank you.